All right. Okay, you guys, yeah, it looks like the chat, I'm sorry, just coming into the chat. Looks like you guys are sorting the turn-in tickets, so thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and flip over here to, come on, there we go. So you should be able to see. Question from previous session. Do I have recommendations for good reference texts for yokai and folklore? Not off the top of my head that I have those titles handy. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I try to find stuff that is older if I can, because a lot of times what is newer is something that is people on the internet repeating each other as opposed to, original material. And yes, those sessions are available for replay. They will be on Twitch and on YouTube. So yeah, by all means, feel free to check those out. But yeah, I see stuff repeated all around the internet on, specifically something about kappa, which I will not go into at this point, but it's just everybody just repeating what they read on somebody else's website, and I could find absolutely nothing authentic or medically accurate or anything for that. So, okay. All right. Oh, the YouTube link has not started yet. Thank you for letting me know that. Why is it not working? Hey, YouTube. Hold on. I was just about to launch, so let's... Where is... Of course, now my mouse is gone. Hey, Seeker, are you handy? Where's my handy dandy mod? Uh-oh. Guys, I'm sorry. Give me a second. I'm going to try to... I think everything's uploading. All right. Or lagging is what I'm trying to say. All right. So let me just throw out here. Oh my gosh, come here, guys. All right. Trying to see if YouTube is playing this or not. Sorry, guys. All right, I'm going to reconnect YouTube. So give me just a second. I'm going to see if I can make this work. I'm forcing. Oh, okay. Is YouTube running? Okay, Megane Girl just threw me a YouTube link. All right. It says there are eyes on YouTube, so I'm hoping that's the case. So, all right. Okay. Okay, good. We're gonna go, and we're gonna hope things are working. All right. So heads up. I'm gonna say this is a PG-ish seminar today. There's nothing in there that should be too non-appropriate for normal adults. I just wanted to, because it has the word story time in it. I've only done this once before, and someone mistook it for a place to that it was they confused it with a puppet show for kids. This is not a puppet show for kids. Do not leave your 5-year-old here while you head for the vendor hall. We are going to be dealing with some adult topics, but it's PG. It's not R. We'll be okay. But I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that this is history, which is not always sanitary. So, okay. Oh, I am on YouTube, just on a different link than provided. I am so sorry. I don't know what's going on with that. I apologize. It should be, if you guys could throw some YouTube links up. I have tack. Okay. Okay. So let's move on with this and see. All right. So I mentioned PG. We're ready to go. All right. We got our tickets turned in, got everything. Okay. All good. Okay. Come on, guys. Where's my slides? There we go. Okay. So we're just going to jump in. This is some of the things we're going to talk about, but there will not be a quiz. This is just my organization. So we are going to reference various periods of Japanese history. Again, there will not be a quiz on this. And I want to emphasize this chart is not to scale. As you can see, some of these are 1,000 years and then another one will be 100 years. But you will hear the Heian era, the Edo era, the Meiji period. This is what this is. So this is your handy dandy cheat sheet. If you ever want to come back to this later, find out what's the Kamakura era and when was that and what happened during it. That was important. So, but let's start with a fun episode from history that is hugely famous and hugely referenced, and there's no reason you would know about it if you didn't grow up in Japan. So I did not. I had to learn about it because I was seeing references to it, and I wanted to know what these references were. Clearly, we're talking about something that everybody except me knows about. What is that? And that is the archery challenge at Yashima. And this takes place during the Genpei War, which we are going to cover in a little bit of detail as we go forward. So hold on. We're just starting with the archery challenge because it's a fun place to start. So we are here at the end of the Heian era. This is where the Heian era actually starts transitioning into the Kamakura period. The Genpei War is when that happens. That is the beginning of the shogunate, by the way. This is where we lose the emperor and pick up a shogun. Anime and manga that you will see set during the Heian period are Togizoshi and Shonen no Myoji, which I mentioned in the folklore talk. And this is all you need to know about this particular battle is the Minamoto are fighting the Taira. The Taira are on the side of the emperor. The Minamoto are on the side of what will become the shogun. Spoiler, they're going to win. And so in this particular battle, the Taira are fleeing. They are running into boats. It's not a pretty retreat. And they're just getting into their boats and sailing away as quickly as they can. But the Minamoto have archers and are picking out the Taira as they go. Christine, yeah, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on with this. I tested it. I swear, I promised. I ran this a number of times and it's not working today. So we're just going to make the best we can of it. And I apologize. So we are, where are we? We're with the army is fleeing, the soldiers, the Taira are fleeing, and the Minamoto are pursuing them, and the Taira are getting picked off by the archers. And somebody has an absolutely brilliant idea. So they send a beautiful young woman. She's described as 17 or 18 in the record, and she's elegantly dressed, and she comes out with a long pole, and which is a red flag with a sun, and the flag is just fluttering and dangling from the pole, and holds it up on the bow of the boat like, bet you can't hit that. And of course, all the Minamoto archers are like, bet you we can. And it's great because it's actually called out in the written history that we have. They're like, somebody's like, what is that? And I was like, oh, it's probably there to distract us. We should hit it. It works exactly as planned. So they call out, who do we have who can hit this? But it's a tiny target. It's fluttering in the wind. It's on a moving boat. It's at a long distance. This is going to be an incredibly tough shot. So they call this guy Nasu no Yoichi, who I believe is recorded to be about 20 at this time. And they're like, hey, can you hit this fan? Because our honor's been called out, on this. And he's like, I don't know, that's a pretty tough shot. And I'm not sure about that. And he's like, I have men who do things when I tell them to. He's like, oh, you're right, sir. I will absolutely hit that. And so he rides his horse out into the waves and he says a little prayer. And he says, I will kill myself if I don't make this shot. And then he draws his bow and he pegs the fan, like just about an inch off the rivet, pegs it, knocks the fan into the water. It's an amazing shot. By the way, both armies are just lined up watching this, no pressure, right? Like, so the Minamoto are all lined up along the shore. The Taira are all on their boats watching because nobody's shooting because everybody's watching to see the fan going on. It's the best tactic ever. So he pegs the flag on the side of the fan. It falls into the water. And everybody's like, wow. And then, applause on both sides. And one of the Taira warriors, starts to dance. And this is a completely appropriate cultural thing. You're starting a dance in appreciation of this great show of skill. And so somebody else pulls an arrow and shoots him as he's dancing. And it's like everything goes silent. And they're like, bad form. So some of the Minamoto are like, yay. And the Taira are like, and then it's on, like back to full battle. So it goes down. At this point, it is worth, this is where Minamoto Yoshitsune drops his bow in the water and he rides back to try to get it. That is commander of the Minamoto. And he's trying to, and of course, all of his retainers are like, you are going to get killed, like leave the freaking bow. But he goes back and he gets it. And he famously explains, I could not leave my bow to be found by the Taira because I would be embarrassed if they discovered I used such a weak bow. So that's his classic explanation for that. So anytime you're seeing a man on horseback in the water, with his bow and arrow, you're probably seeing a reference to the archery challenge at Yashima. And we were just talking about Pampoko in the folklore talk. And one of the scenes when the Tanuki are shapeshifting and doing pictures for each other, or images and recreations for each other, is of this event, which of course is not remotely explained in the film. Because the Japanese audiences would know what is being represented. But one of the Tanuki, and if you recall, it's a very old Tanuki who's doing this presentation, so he's possibly doing this from memory. So, that is anytime you're seeing the Heian archer in the waves, you're seeing a reference to the Battle of Yashima. So how this shook out, the Taira did get away. They were successful. They escaped for a month. So we'll see. Stay tuned for Dan no Ura. Nasa no Yoichi was made a daimyo for his trouble and his success, which is great until someone else won a hunting contest and then got promoted over him, because that's the problem when you're just trying to achieve your way into success, I guess. Anyway, so Nasa no Yoichi ultimately became a Buddhist monk. He founded a temple. That temple was passed down through his direct lineage for 750 years until World War II. So that is a pretty amazing run for that particular temple. So, okay. Oh, thank you for posting a link. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm so frustrated by this tech thing. Okay, so let's talk about the Battle of Dan no Ura, which takes place about a month after Yashima. And so we saw that challenge went down. This is a key moment in Japanese history because this is, spoiler, where the shogunate begins. And so we are finishing the Genpei War here at this time. And so just to catch you up, if you didn't roll out of bed this morning with a complete understanding of the Genpei War. The Genpei is between the war is between the Taira and the Minamoto clan. Now, because of the way the Japanese language works, I'm sorry, it's confusing. The Taira, which is that kanji that you see on the left under there, can also be pronounced heike. Okay, it's the Yonyomi versus the Kunyomi readings. It's a Japanese pronunciation versus a Chinese pronunciation is how you'll hear it described sometimes, but that is a very confusing way to say it because it's Japanese still, even if it's using the Chinese pronunciation. Anyway, the point is, Taira, that symbol can be pronounced either Taira or Heike. Heike Monogatari, I mentioned earlier, but that is the record of the of this war. It's what we have, and it's a record of the Heike clan, the Taira clan. The Minamoto clan is also called the Genji. And I had to catch myself earlier because I almost mentioned the Genji, but that would have been confusing since I'd been calling them the Minamoto. So Taira versus Minamoto, Heike versus Genji, it's the same war. So I'm sorry about that. Taira have been very closely associated with the emperor. They are the emperor officially, I think, doesn't have a family, but the Taira is their family, right? Like they are branches of the imperial family. The Genji or the Minamoto are also related to the imperial family, just not quite as closely. And if you notice here that I've said the clan color is red and the clan color is white, this is why we have red and white as the colors of Japan today, is because of these two very powerful clans. And this particular war is really instrumental in the shaping of how their history went down. So this Battle of Dan no Ura is going to take place at the Shimonoseki Strait, is what I pinned on the map there for you. And it's a kind of a weird S curve in the strait between islands. So it's a very tricksy piece of water. And the Taira, the Taira have better naval skills, but the Minamoto have more ships. So we'll get into that in just a minute. But first, I want to give myself just a little bit of an out as I'm explaining this. So names in this period, an individual man would have multiple names. And the Nanori is when you get your formal adulthood name, you would take a kanji from your father or sponsor. So Taira no Kiyomori might pass a single kanji on to Taira no Tomomori. And so you can see that kanji being shared there. What this ends up with, though, is that you have a name like Taira no Miyamori, and it becomes a collection of very, very similar names. And that's going on in the Minamoto clan as well. And so then you get to say things like, in this particular case, the Taira lost the Tomomori, Noritsune, Norimori, Tsunimori, Tsukimori, Arimori, Yukimori. I'm just going to tell you guys, I'm just giving you the heads up. I'm going to stumble on names. Be patient with me. It's tricky. So, okay. And I am not getting anything rolling into chat. If you guys want to, if anybody could just throw something into chat so I can tell if it's working or if you're just being quiet. Being quiet is totally fine. I just want to make sure if there's questions going by that I'm able to see them. So, okay. Oh, yay. Fantastic. Awesome. Keyboard smash. Good. Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. So as I said, it was a bad setup going on here for the Taira in the get-go. They have the emperor with them. The emperor's name is Antoku. He is somewhere between 5 and 8 years old. And the reason that we're unclear on this is because of the way records were kept and the way ages were counted. So it gets a little bit fuzzy, and you will see various accounts of this, modern accounts of this that will say, oh, he was 6. Okay, he's somewhere between 5 and 8. That's what we can really be sure of. It doesn't matter. He's a kid, okay? He's a little kid while this is going on. They also have the imperial regalia, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But what you need to know at this point is the imperial regalia are the gifts of the gods that convey that you are the divine heir and you are supposed to be the emperor. So having those really, really underscores your legitimacy as emperor. And losing those is a way to lose your right to the throne. So the Taira are going to be very, very protective of keeping those objects. And they are a sword, a mirror, and a what's usually translated as a jewel. And so we'll talk a little bit about more as we go. But the Taira at this point have the emperor and the regalia with them. But they don't really have a foothold. They've got a lot of ships, and they have a better knowledge of the local area, and they have better seamen on their ships. So they're it's not necessarily a bad setup for them. Yoshitsune has fewer experienced sailors or sailors who are experienced in this area. Remember, I said it's a fairly tricky strait. What the Minamoto do have is Taguchi Shigeyoshi, and his son has been captured by the Minamoto. So he should be loyal to the Taira and, despite the threat to his son. However, and to be fair, Tomonori said, before this battle started, it's like, hey, I don't trust this guy. I think they've got his kid, and I think it's gonna go out. I know. Just let me kill him before the battle starts. And he was voted down. He was right, because as they get in, Shigeyoshi betrays the Taira, flips all his command around to fight on the side of the Minamoto, and even worse, tells the Minamoto which of the ships the baby emperor is on. Baby emperor. He's a baby. He's too young to be running this. Okay. So the battle is on. Thank you. Please give your ticket. I really appreciate that. It helps us out a lot. The battle is on, and this is a huge battle, and it starts out going well for the Taira, but with the betrayal and all of that, and then as the tides change, the tides actually shift in favor of the Minamoto as time wears on. So this, you will see, there's so much artistic interpretation of this because it was such an important and key event. But there are a lot of really phenomenal events recorded as taking place during this battle. So at one point, Yoshitsune is fighting. Remember, he's the commander of the Minamoto. And he sees Noritsune coming. Taira no Noritsune is young. He's in his early 20s. He's got really gorgeous armor, and he is absolutely your anime badass, comes straight out of the script to kick some Minamoto butt. And he is coming for Yoshitsune. Yoshitsune sees him coming and leaps 8 boats over to get away from him. And so we've got, just some really great stories recorded. 3 men come to cover Yoshitsune's retreat. And Noritsune says, well, you might kill me, but I'm not going alone. And so he just throws down his sword and he bull rushes these 3 guys and takes all 3 of them into the water with him. And that is how we lose Noritsune. So lots of drama, lots of action. If you look at the top left image here, you can probably see the guys swimming underwater to get to the other boats. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff going on here. But it's going very poorly for the Taira as time passes. It starts well. They're losing ground. They start to see things are actually going very, very poorly. So Taira no Norimori ties himself to an anchor and throws himself into the sea. This is one of our last remaining Taira commanders. So he commits suicide with an anchor. The emperor's grandmother, who is at this point a Buddhist nun of the 2nd rank. So she's recorded largely as Nidono, which is roughly number 2, a lady number 2. So because she's of the 2nd rank, she and the other women of the court who are just in this ship with the young emperor, hiding and waiting and watching stuff go down around them. And they know they're not coming out of this. They have 2 things that she's concerned about. Obviously, if the Minamoto get the emperor, they're going to kill him, and it's not going to be an honorable death. And if they get to the regalia, they have legitimacy to the throne, because those are the God's gifts that prove that you are the divine heir. So she says, I will not be captured with my emperor, and stands up, and everybody goes, okay, let's do this. And so she takes young Antoku out, coaches him in praying to the Buddha before they die. And her line is, in the depths of the sea, we have a capital, because they've just been flying from place to place, running ahead of the Minamoto. We're going to go to a place where we finally have a place to rule. And she leaps into the sea. And we're in the Heian era. She's wearing this junihoto, many, many, many layers of silk kimono. And I mean, she probably, it's an anchor. It's an anchor on of its own. So these court women go into the sea carrying the young emperor and the regalia. So this is a problem, not just for the obvious reasons. The imperial regalia are, as I said, critical to the emperorship of Japan. And the sword, the mirror, and the jewel, what's usually translated as a jewel, it's a tama in Japanese. And those have their origins in the very, very beginnings of Japanese myth, when when the sun goddess is on the earth, establishing Japanese rules. So like these are really, really important things, and they are never seen, they are never drawn, they are never photographed today. They will come out for important ceremonies, but you still don't see the objects. You see the case holding the object. So these are, again, really, really critical things. So one of the Minamoto captures a woman as she's leaping in with the mirror. And so he manages to get her before she gets over. They swarm the ship. He managed to catch her before she gets overboard. Now, there's a story out there that he looked at the mirror and went blind. Don't know. We'll see. We'll find out how that went. The woman who goes into the sea with the jewel, she did make it in. The Minamoto sent divers and were able to recover the jewel. The sword went in, and that's where history gets very fuzzy. So one story is that it was a forgery that went into the sea. So it didn't matter that it was lost because it wasn't the real sword. One story is that a replica was forged to replace the sword that was lost in the sea. That's nice, but then that means the sword we have today is a replica, and that's bad. So we don't like that story. There's a version that it was returned supernaturally, or there's a version that it was recovered elsewhere. I went with the last version for my story when I wrote this. So, but that's still in debate today. Nobody actually knows what happened when the sword, did it go into the sea? Was it recovered from the sea? Nobody's actually sure today. By the way, if you're thinking of like, wait a minute, Sailor Moon had a sword and a mirror and a jewel that had to come together to get the Holy Grail. Yes, there's absolutely just a reference to this. So, question about how they stop people from drawing them, because nobody gets to see them. Okay. I mentioned here on the left, again, I'm pointing at my slide for you guys. In each of those, I list the shrine where they are supposed to be kept. So the jewel, for example, is at the Ise Grand Shrine, but that is in storage there. It's in a case. Nobody sees it. Not even the priests at the shrine get to see it. The cases are brought out for very special occasions, such as the transition from, to a new emperor, a new coronation, but they are not on display anywhere. And part of that is for, very practical conservation reasons. We are talking about things that are thousands of years old. But part of that is because they are sacred objects. So someone asks, how do you know if they have them if nobody looks at them? How do they even know in their boxes? That is a question which has been raised, and I am in no way prepared to take that on today. But yes, that is a question that has been raised. Is it all a cover up and they don't exist anymore? Is it, do they really exist, but we aren't, yeah. So, and I am not prepared to deal with that today. I'm just going to take a drink from my Gen Con commemorative 2020 glass. Okay. So I will say, yes, a magatama is the same kind of thing. Absolutely. Yes. Schrodinger's regalia. Yeah. And I some of those objects haven't been seen in hundreds of years. They're saying, and in some cases they will be conserved, every 100 years. Somebody will open it up and do a cleaning, do some conservation, and then seal it again. I don't know how often that gets done with the regalia. And I'm not prepared to address today whether or not they exist in their current form today. But I do know that you can't go in and ask to see them. Don't try. So, if you mentioned, or I'm sorry, if you were here when I was talking my folklore and mythology talk, and I talked about the Suzuri no Tamashi or the ink yokai, that's particularly associated with ink stones that were being used to record or to copy the Heike Monogatari and the Battle of Dan no Ura. And the stone was used to record that battle so many times that the stone became imbued with the story and could act it out. And so the ink would actually rise up and the ink would become the sea in the naval battle. So that's what that particular ink yokai is doing. It is associated with recording the Battle of Dan no Ura. So, okay. There is a crab that lives in this area, the Shimonoseki Straits, where that is known as the heikigani. The heike, again, you'll notice, is the Taira name. It's called the samurai crab in English, and it is has these completely natural shapes and markings on it that many people think looks like an angry samurai mask. And there's prints referencing the samurai spirits moving into the crabs there. And you will see this mentioned, it got popularized a while back as a proof of human-assisted evolution, that the local fishermen did not want to eat the crabs that looked like people, so the crabs became more and more looking like people, etc. That's been largely debunked for a number of reasons that we don't really have time to go into, but the crabs are real, and that is what they look like. So, and people do eat them. So there we go. Okay. Oh man, if people aren't getting the thing, okay, can somebody post the new link in the event details in the message board? Can that be done? Can you guys post in there? I think you can. Let me see if I can get to it here. I'm so frustrated that people are having trouble getting in when with these link issues. If anybody can do that, give me a heads up in the chat, please. I'm gonna look real fast and see if I can get to there. Darn it. Yes, it's there. Okay. Oh, thanks, Christine. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Inspiration for the Crab Clan and Legend of the Five Rings. L5R, I know only barely. And so I'm not comfortable saying that's definitely the case, but it's certainly the Heikigane are certainly well known. So, okay. All right. Okay. Everybody. Oh, the blue-footed booby is my background. Did that flash briefly? I'm sorry. All right. I went to the Galapagos and I have blue-footed booby pictures, but that's my screen background. Okay, awesome, good. Thanks for the link updates, guys. Okay, let's talk about the 47 Ronin, because that's another story that is frequently referenced and retold a number of times and not always correctly. So I'm going to give you the historical version, and then you can still have fun with the fictionalized versions, but at least you'll know what we're referencing. So, okay, so we're going to jump ahead to the Edo era. And so we are definitely the shogun is in charge. The emperor exists, but he is not running the country. In theory, the shogun is running the country in the emperor's name. In practice, the emperor is window dressing. So that's the period of history we are right here. Okay. So anime and manga set during this period: Lone Wolf and Cub, House of Five Leaves, just to give you an idea of what period we're talking about. Sengakuji is the temple where the 47 Ronin are buried. And so I'm going to start here with this image. This is what the temple looks like today. That is a statue of Oishi who will be a prominent figure in the story we're about to tell. So, yeah, quite the jump in time. We are not going in chronological order here. I'll just give you that right now. We're going in the order that I wanted to do them in. So that's where we are. That's why we've got the timeline guide. The year is 1701. It is April. Asano Naganori and one other daimyo who, sorry, is not important today, are assigned to learn a fresh set of etiquette for when the imperial envoys come to visit the shogun's court. So they were daimyo and who were required to rotate in and out of service in the capital. So these are two relatively rural daimyo who are now spending their time, their service time in the court, and then they will rotate back out to their own homes in the countryside. They are supposed to be learning this etiquette from Kira Yoshinaka, who is an etiquette master, which is a totally legitimate job title, business card at that time. Now, Kira Yoshinaka nobody is 100% certain exactly how this happened. It's possible that Asano did not understand the proper etiquette of the gifts you were supposed to bring to your etiquette master or to anyone who is going to be instructing you. And he did not bring a gift, or he did not bring a nice enough gift. Okay. It is also possible, and I'm slightly inclined to this interpretation for me personally, that Kira was a jerk and wanted not a gift, but a bribe, and therefore put a little pressure on your gift was insufficient. So we don't have a solid answer for that, what went down, but we have some ideas. Sorry, I just saw a question in the chat. Why does a new era start with each emperor? I don't have a complete answer for that, but I will say that each emperor at this point chooses or not just the emperor. There's a group that chooses a theme. I'm going to say for each new reign, and so rather than using the emperor's name or they're kind of choosing. They're setting a tone with the word, which I believe right now is Reiwa. So yeah. Anyway, so jumping back to 1701. So Kira is putting the pressure on these two daimyo. Hey, you owe me stuff. You should be giving me some stuff. And Asano and the other daimyo are like, no, we actually don't. But the other daimyo's retainers kind of save his butt by pulling out, and they pull their money. They give a gift in his name. So Kira lets the pressure off him. But that just makes Asano look even worse, because he hasn't given a really nice gift. And so finally they're in a roka, which is a long corridor, if you picture the long outdoor corridors that connect buildings. And this one is decorated with paintings of pine trees. So that's a matsu no roka. And some exchange is made, and Kira at that point says something to Asano, which roughly translated into modern language would be, "You uneducated redneck hick." And Asano is done. He's had enough, and he draws his sword and gives Kira a minor stabbing in the head. Now, it is a minor stabbing in the head because Kira is fine. He's going to live through this. He's just going to have a little bit of scarring. But you still can't go around the shogun's palace stabbing people in the head. Like, there are rules about such things. So the shogun orders Asano to kill himself, and so he gets a honorable death because he gets to commit suicide, but he's still very dead because he stabbed Kira, who had been riding him, for a very long time. So that's, let me just pause there, and we're going to jump ahead to the stones where it happened. Stones where it happened. So this stone is marking the site of that roka. So this is where the insult and attack happened. And so that we know where that was because the palace, was there. And so this is still on the palace grounds. It's just that roka no longer exists in that spot. This is a stone at Sengakuji, and this is a stone that Asano bled on as he died. So that's why they consider it important, and they've got it saved there. So you can't go down stabbing people in the head. Why even have a sword? Look, you can totally stab people in the head, just not in the shogun's own palace. Like, that's just tacky, right? So take that outdoors. Those are the rules. Okay. All right. So word gets sent to Ako, which is where Asano is actually the daimyo when he's not being dead. And so all of his retainers are now ronin. This means that they have no means of support. It means they cannot work for other daimyo. So this is a fairly devastating piece of news to receive. And so the retainers are like, oh my gosh, we don't have a way to live. We don't have, should we fight when the shogun's men come to take over the property, because Asano is no longer daimyo, right? So he's now that property is forfeit. Should we fight? Should we put resistance? Should we all commit seppuku? What is our option? And so Oishi Yoshio, who's one of the people in charge there, he says, no, I've got another idea. I've got another plan. We're going to surrender, and we're going to live absolute trash lives. So 47 of the Ronin samurai retainers, 47 of them agreed to this. And so they surrendered. They went out, and they can't work, right? They're utterly dissolute. They can't, because samurai is a caste, not a profession. So there are, you can't, as a samurai, you can't work as a manual labor or trade or, that kind of thing. And you also can't go now be a warrior or retainer for another daimyo. So these people are in trouble. So they live pretty horrible lives. They are visiting. Oishi is hanging out at the brothels. These people are drinking all the time. Oishi is reported to have one night as he's staggering home from drinking and whoring and everything else, and he just passes out in the street. And another samurai coming down the street sees him and is like, "You are the absolute worst excuse for a piece of human refuse." And he kicks him in the face. And, and this is, pretty dedicated to this life. His wife says, "Hey, honey, I love you, but this is going pretty far. I mean, you're drunk all the time. You're hanging out with the prostitutes. Don't you think that it's time to knock this off?" And he says, "You're right. I've been married to you for, 20 years or something, and I love you dearly, so I'm going to divorce you." So he divorces her, and he sends her and their kids away. Now, this is probably to protect them, because that means they're not connected to what he's going to have going on. But it does happen. So except for his 15-year-old son, Chikara, and he keeps his son, and he says, "Hey, I'm going to put out a toy and a sword, and you have to choose." No, that's Lone Wolf and Cub. But he says to his son, I'm going to do this thing. Do you want to go and be safe with your mom and your siblings, or do you want to come with me and do this thing? And his son's like, "I'm in. Let's do this." So yes, the videos will be on replay. So he stays with Chikara, and meanwhile, Kira's got spies, because Kira's like, these guys didn't surrender. These guys didn't, I don't know, or I'm sorry, they didn't, they have reason to dislike him. But again, it's not in the Bushido code that they have to they have to seek revenge. So he's just kind of keeping an eye on him. So Kira's got spies on these guys, and the spies are like, "Oh my gosh, these guys are complete trash. Like, you have nothing to fear. These people are literally sleeping in ditches. Like, they're nothing." So Kira's starting to feel pretty safe, and Oishi's starting to feel like Kira's starting to feel pretty safe. So it's now 1703, and it's January. So it's been, remember, we started in April of 1701. So it's been a while that these have been disreputable trash lives. And Oishi says, "Okay, you know what? I think Kira's bought it. Time to do the thing." So the 47, it's actually only 46 at this point, because they send one person away as a messenger. The 46 of them go to Kira's house in the capital. And what I love about this, and why I think Kira was probably a bit of a jerk, not just because it makes him a better villain for the story to happen around, but I kind of, because the Oishi went to the neighbors and he said, "Hey, there's going to be a bit of a ruckus tonight. It's just, we're not robbing anybody. We're just going to break in and kill Kira, just so you know." And the neighbors were like, "Okay." So I have to feel like maybe Kira hadn't made a whole lot of friends in the neighborhood. He didn't have people over for barbecues. Like, he was not making friends. So Oishi leads the charge. Chikara leads the other. They split into two groups. They attack from the front and the back of the house. Here's what I think is, I will throw some respect in these guys' direction. They have a sit down before they attack the house, and they say, "We are here for Kira. We are not here for the women. We are not here for the servants. We are not here for any of the retainers who are not fighting us. Like, we are here for Kira, and anybody else who is not involved is not involved." So, I give them props for that. They attack the house from front and back. They break in. Kira does have retainers who come out to fight, because, hello, there are people invading the house. And these Ronin kill 40 of the retainers who are fighting. Remember, there's only 46 Ronin themselves. They kill 40 of the guys. They have 4 walking wounded by the end of the night. So they roll through this. It's granted, they're catching people off guard in the middle of the night, but they roll through this. The women flee, the servants flee, Kira flees. Kira, after they take care of all the defenders, and they're searching the house, and they spend an hour searching the house, and they finally find a guy in a storage shed, mostly naked, hiding in the storage shed, and they bring him out, and they bring him to Oishi, and they're like, this is the only guy we can find, but like, he's supposed to be a really respectable etiquette master, and this guy's half naked and hiding in a storage shed. But Oishi recognizes that he's got a wound on his head where Asano is supposed to have given him that, minor stabbing. And so Oishi's like, yeah, this is the guy we want. So now at this point, we remember we're only getting the story from the survivors. Kira is not one of them. So it's possible that we're getting a slightly slanted view. Just putting that out there, just be aware that bias happens. But Oishi at this point reported that he knelt and offered Kira the wakizashi that Asano had used to kill himself. And he says, this is Asano's own wakizashi. You can use it to kill yourself and do the honorable thing. And since you are responsible for his death. And Kira is like, I'm not killing myself. And Oishi's like, cool. I didn't really want you to. I'll take care of that. And so he kills him. So Oishi decapitates Kira. They drop his head in a bucket, and then the Ronin start walking, and they walk out the front gate. They start walking. It's I don't remember offhand, like 8 or 10 kilometers to the Sengakuji temple, and they're walking past all these houses and the neighbors, and they give the heads up to and that whatnot. And the neighbors are bringing them food and drink as they're coming. Again, I don't think Kira made a lot of friends. So the neighbors are bringing out snacks and praising them as they come down. They get to the temple. They wash the head at the well at the temple, and then they present the head on Asano's grave. And they're like, we took care of it. Here you go. And then they go and they turn themselves in. So now the shogun's like, oh, dude, like these guys just totally offed my etiquette master, but they also like did it because he was responsible for the death of their lord, and also everybody kind of really likes them. So they were technically arrested, but they were held in various daimyo households during their period of arrest, rather than, in a pit somewhere, because they were treated as heroes. What I have read is that the code did not require them, because sometimes you hear like, oh, they did this as revenge as required by the code. The Bushido code, like, it's not like, nobody swears it as, it's not like a book, right? But anyway, the Bushido code did not require this revenge directly, but everybody took it as a proper example of this spirit of, hey, you are responsible for my master's death, so I'm going to avenge him. And so they ultimately, the shogun's like, hey, I appreciate what you did, and you had good reason, but you really can't go around killing my etiquette master. And so they were ordered to commit seppuku, and they did. But they died with great honor, and everybody acclaiming them as heroes. They are buried, as I said, at the temple, where I don't know if you can see the I mentioned before those wooden boards are memorial service markers. Those are fresh boards, so they're still receiving memorial services regularly. There are flowers on their graves. There is sake on their graves. I arrived early in the morning and it was already there. So they're very definitely still honored today. And Tokugawa, the shogun, did return the land and title to Asano's son. Not all the land, but enough of it to be like, hey, I kind of appreciate you and your dad. So there we go. Allegedly, the samurai who kicked Oishi in the face in the street, the story goes that he came to Sengakuji and addressed Oishi's grave and said, "Hey, I misunderstood. I'm sorry I criticized you. You're actually a fantastic samurai." And then he killed himself on the grave. So yes, they were imprisoned and then had to commit seppuku. Yes, because that was their sentencing. So, okay. And there's a thing called a Goshuin Cho. It's a seal book that you carry from temple to temple or shrine to shrine, and you can get seals at each temple or shrine that kind of marks where you've been. Has a religious significance, but it's also completely acceptable and in today's society to do it as a social experience rather than as a religious experience. So that is my Goshuin Cho there. That I actually purchased my book for this at Sengakuji, and so it has the 47 Ronin on the cover because that is a thing they have just at that temple because that is where they are buried. So how did any men in Japan live long enough to create new generations? They got started very early. Well, that is part of it. But yeah, that is a tragic thing about, and that's why I had the warning about history's not all sanitized. We're going to work through a lot of dead people today. I'm sorry. But let's do something fun for a moment, which is the founding of Nara. So Nara we're going to jump back to the aptly named Nara period. And this was the first permanent capital in Japan. Excuse me. So we are pretty far back in history right now. We're still in our first millennium in AD. And so with this is I think it is the empress, if I remember correctly, who moved to Nara and established a capital there, and then actually stayed through several courts. There's not a lot set during the Nara period. So creators, I want to see you get on this. Like, that's a pretty interesting period in history. We're going to have a couple of stories out of it. So let's go. Let's do this. Okay. The founding of Nara, and just to put you like where we are culturally, this is not very long after we're actually starting to adopt the name Nihon or Nippon. Chinese, which of course, massive influence on Japan, but they were calling Japan the Wa or Wakoku, which is the country of Wa. And we think that shift to Nihon or Nippon took place at the very end of the 7th century, very beginning of the 8th century. So as late as 703 has been speculated, according to my notes. And we are 710. So we're right on where we're starting to become Japan. The city then was known as Heijokyo as opposed to Nara. That is the current name. And it was laid out formally in what was the contemporary Japanese style. Okay. And how about Sunrise Land? Land of the Rising Sun, Nihon, sun origin, I'm embarrassed to tell you how long I looked at Nihon and the kanji, which are literally sun origin, and I never put that together with Land of the Rising Sun. They were like existing in two compartments in my brain. Anyway. Yeah, I got nothing. I got no defense for that. Yeah. So, and Wa may have been related to Eastern something. I don't know. I'm not ready. I'm not ready for that quiz, but it's also not terribly clear. Anyway, we are going to talk today about the founding of Kasuga Taisha, which is the Kasuga Shrine in Nara, and it is hugely significant and important. You probably know it, if you know it, for the deer. If you've seen on YouTube the bowing deer, deer bowing their heads at tourists to get cookies, that you're looking at Kasuga Taisha in Nara. But it's important beyond just the deer. So the deer come from the original story of this, the origin of this shrine, where the deity descends from the mountain riding a deer. And so for that is the reason that the deer are sacred, is because they had a very prominent place, Takeme's Kazuchi. But So today the deer are not hunted, the deer are protected, and tourists feed them cookies so that you get the bowing deer with that. The mountain that they rode down is also considered sacred. And this is really interesting because since 841, logging and hunting have been prohibited on that sacred mountain. This means you basically have a primeval forest on this mountain, and it is today a designated UNESCO site because it's protected and it's not been developed in the way that the land around it has been. So there are 4 kami enshrined at the Kasuga Taisha, and I just want to call out the one at the end, Himegami, which if you're familiar with the language, you're like, wait a minute, that's just princess spirit. Like, what is? Does she have a name? Like she's the spirit princess. What is that? And it's not that, because I had a conversation with someone about this. It's not that she just gets lobbed in the corner as, oh yeah, and we have a princess spirit. No, her name is too important to be said. So she's legit. She's not just an afterthought. There we go. Okay, so these are some photos. I've cut out the photo of the torii in the middle is not mine. The others are, but that one I lifted from Wikipedia because it was a better picture than mine. But I want to mention that torii in particular, and it is the Ichi no torii. So it's the first torii in the line as you progress to the shrine. So that one's actually fairly far away from the shrine itself because it is the first torii, and then you've got a long walk into the shrine area. What I didn't realize as I walked under it and learned a few minutes later is that Ichi no torii is the ichiest of tories, the very first torii, because the other torii in Japan are modeled off of that one. Again, we're going back way back to our original permanent capital, and this was a very significant shrine. So close ties to the Fujiwara and to the emperor. So the other torii were modeled off of this one. So it is the ichiest of Ichi no torii. The lower left picture, you will see a fence around a stump of a tree. That is a matsu, it's a pine tree. Unfortunately, the tree itself is gone. There's, I believe, a descendant tree growing near it, but this particular tree is just the fenced off. And that is a tree that the kami were sitting in. So it's a very significant and sacred tree. What is fascinating about this tree that you have definitely seen without knowing that you were seeing it, if you have seen a no stage, which are always pictured with a bridge and paintings in the back, and there's always a pine tree painted at the back of a no stage, it's that pine tree. So again, really lots of highly concentrated important stuff here in Nara. And then the cedar tree that you will see in the 2 photos on the right, that cedar tree and a wisteria tree that I don't have photographed, I don't have pictured here, are depicted in a 1309 picture scroll of Nara, and it's a big tree then. And so you can see here in the photos, it's actually growing through the building, and they just like, yeah, big old cedar tree, grow through the building, that's fine. So, okay. Oh, come on. Please update my slide. There we go. Okay. So immediately next to Kasuga Taisha is the Daibutsu. And so we're going to talk a little bit about why we have the Daibutsu, and because it is also ancient and important. To get there, we have to talk about smallpox. So smallpox first was recorded in Japan in 735. There would be later waves, of course, but this is the first epidemic that we have recorded for smallpox. Allegedly picked up by a fisherman when he visited the mainland, but of course, it's hard to say for certain. There certainly were a lot of fishermen and a lot of traders traveling back and forth. But what we do know is that by 736, the epidemic is really on, and this is devastating. People are either fleeing because they're terrified or they're dying. And smallpox is really pretty horrific. We'll talk about it. So by 737, it's bad enough that they just suspend taxes for. I want you to imagine it's bad enough that we just don't collect taxes because there's nobody to collect them, there's nobody to collect them from, and nobody can afford to pay them anyway because food's not getting grown because the farmers are either running away from their farms trying to get ahead of the disease, or they're dying. And so we're not growing food, we're not doing trade, we're not doing any of the things. So heads up, I'm going to show some pictures for one slide and then we'll move on. But it's being censored. Okay. Smallpox is a truly horrific disease. And every single time I talk about this or I check my notes, I have to go back and fact check it because I am certain that I have made a typo, and it is never a typo. It is just true. In the 20th century alone, so just our last century, smallpox is estimated to have killed at least 300 million people. And I remind you that the 20th century is when we beat it. Okay, so it is a phenomenal force of nature. The last naturally occurring case was in the 70s. So if you think about really, it's obviously it wound down for quite a while before then. It only had a little more than half a century and it killed 300 million people. So yeah, when I hear people talk about, vaccines kill people, I'm like, yeah, but they kill a whole lot less people. Like, yeah. Anyway, smallpox is coming across Japan. It's changing politics because positions in court are opening up because people are dying. Roughly a third of the adult population was wiped out in this particular epidemic. It was certainly higher in some areas. You would be even more devastated. There's probably more death in children. They weren't recorded, but it's going to be a more significant disease toward kids. And here's the thing: not only if you survive smallpox, not only are you fairly scarred, but there's a good chance you'll also end up blind. So that is a major shift in your labor force, that you're going to lose more than a third of your labor force. So, all right. So this is where we start seeing references to, again, what would be frequently translated in English as smallpox demons, and the association with the color red. Now, this wasn't just in Japan. This happened in Europe and America as well, that red was used as a preventative or as a treatment with smallpox. So that is something that you will see here, and we'll mention that again later when we talk about the akabeko. So there's a temple called Todaiji, which is right near the Kasuga Shrine, as I mentioned. It is founded in 738, so right when this is going on. And so the emperor issues some edicts that, hey guys, this is bad. We need temples throughout the nation because we need something for people to focus on. We need something for people to do and projects for them to work on. And we could really use some divine intervention. So they start building a lot of temples. And in particular, they're going to build a giant Buddha here at Todaiji. That's Daibutsu, big Buddha. Sounds way better in Japanese than when I say it. So in 743, we commissioned the Daibutsu. In 752, that's when they have the eye-opening ceremony. So it's officially completed at that point. This Todaiji was the largest wooden building. So from 743 until 1998, this was the largest wooden building in the world. And I'm going to talk about the scale, but I'm just telling you right now, you're not getting the scale. So I'm going to do my best to convey the scale to you. So this is a photo of the Daibutsu today, but what you need to understand is more than 2.5 million people contributed to this building project. And more than 250,000 of them were directly in the construction. 350,000 people just building things. The statue of the Buddha itself is 52 feet tall. It is in bronze. And on either side of the Todaiji, the temple itself, there are two pagodas that are more than 300 feet tall, which makes them some of the tallest structures in the world. And they're made of wood. And what you see today when you look at the photos that I'm going to be showing you, keep in mind that is a third smaller than the original. because after fire and earthquake damage and something called the Genpei War that kind of messed stuff up, they were trying to rebuild it, and they physically could not rebuild it to the same scale for cost and availability resource reasons. So this is a model of the original. So you can see those pagodas on the side, and we're in the first millennia after Christ here, and we're building 300-foot tall wooden structures that are, these things are amazing. Used more than 2,000 acres of forest. The daibutsu, to cast that bronze statue, used all the copper in Japan. Everything that was available, we took it, we used it. This was a fantastically huge process. It essentially bankrupted the nation, which, to be fair, was kind of messed up already, but all of the resources went into building this giant Buddha. And of course, we were already having production problems, and then we did a lot of deforestation with this. When they did the rebuilding after the Genpei War, they were clearing entire forests to rebuild this. And it's sad that most people today do not realize how big trees are supposed to be, because they've never seen a properly sized tree. And a 12-inch diameter tree is not a big tree. Okay, a 20-inch diameter tree is not a big tree, but that's what we have today. Even in this time period, so the Genpei War, so we're back in the Heian Kamakura era, so we are way back. Even at that time, they did not have the trees to replace the pillars they had made, because they cut them all down for the first one. And so it's 300 years later, and they still can't replace it. So they were taking multiple other trees and binding them together to replace the pillars, because you don't have time in 300 years to grow new big trees, right? They built over 100 dams to raise the water to transport the trees. This is huge. So, this is what it looks like today, and you can see the people down on the steps. And again, remember that this is a third smaller than the original. This is very, very, the scale on this thing was just phenomenal. So this is the Nandaimon, the South Great Gate. And it was constructed in the 1100s. So after the Genpei War is when they added this. And the wooden guardian figures inside this gate. Most of the gates, as you walk in, there will be a guardian on either side. And they're inside the gate, so they're protected from the weather. But these wooden guardian figures are original, which is amazing to me in my very shrunk American time scale. I think we're like 200 years is really old. These figures date back to the original construction. They're 28 feet tall. And these are the photos I took. So they're not particularly great photos, because now they're screened for their protection. But I did find these photos that were taken during a restoration, so you can see what they look like. But the artistry of these wooden carvings at 28 feet tall, I mean, these are really well done. They're really beautiful. This is one of the lotus petals from the Buddha's throne, and it's original. So you're looking at 700s work here, which is kind of awesome. And so this made Todaiji an absolute center for Buddhism in Japan. It was the seat, the administrative seat of all 6 schools of Buddhism at that time. All officially licensed monks took their ordination there. Eventually, the capital moved from Nara, and that took some of the authority and importance away from Todaiji. So, but this is what it looks like today. And again, you can see the human figures, and just remember that it was 30% larger than what you're seeing now. Oh my gosh. So, all right. How are we doing on time? Okay. I think we're good. We're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about the Ainu next. The Ainu is a little bit of a detour, because we're not talking about an event in history. We're talking about a people group. But it's a people group that doesn't get a lot of attention, so I think it's good to at least mention them. So the Ainu are a indigenous people, largely associated with the north of Japan. They probably came over from Siberia about 20,000 years ago. So they were definitely in the islands for a good long while ago. By contrast, the Wajin, or what we would call the ethnic Japanese people group, probably came over 2,800, 3,000 years ago. So the Ainu are a little inconvenient for the myth of Japanese homogeneity. So it's interesting if you go through history, and you'll see them described as aberrant hunter-gatherers of the modern age, or the lost Caucasoid race, or different things that just make them sound a little bit odd, because nobody really wanted to admit that they had been here for a long time when we had this great myth of the cultural, non-changing, completely homogenous group. But they have been here, a long time, and they served as middlemen for Japanese and Chinese trade for quite a lot of that. Somebody said, I just started recently learning about Ainu culture. Yeah, there's really a lot of fascinating stuff that we are not going to get into today, but I'm just going to. I just want people to know that they exist. So great. In the 9th century, roughly, Japan started conquering them as opposed to merely trading with them. There were several significant revolts in the 15th, 17th, and 18th centuries. And, I'm going to jump back over here. The assimilation really cracked down in the 19th century. And this is where we were forcibly separating families. We were forcing marriages. We were taking children away from the families and putting them in a school where they weren't allowed to speak their native language. We were taking people away and putting them in camps. And a lot of, this is going to sound really familiar, because it's very much what we were experiencing at the same time here in America and Canada with the indigenous populations here. And I have not tracked down, but I have, the actual names, but I have read that the Japanese government hired some assimilation experts from the West to help with it. So you're seeing a lot of the same tactics, because the same people may have been involved. And I need to fact check that, so don't quote me on that, but that's one of the things that I have seen. But the Ainu, because they're not Wajin, they look very different. They have Caucasoid European eyes. They have lots and lots of body hair. Big beards were a big part of that. And they had a very, bears had a very honored place in their religion and in their culture. And you'll see, you can see all the swirly designs on their clothes. Those are very distinctive patterns that they used a lot. And so that the culture didn't blend as well. But then the Japanese Civil War and the Meiji Restoration happened, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. And so a lot of the Japanese who were happy with the current way of life and didn't want to admit foreigners and live the new way and all of that. And so they moved north to Hokkaido to get to what was, imagined to be a less contaminated region, but that put them in conflict with the Ainu who were living there. And so you had a lot of that, pressure that I was talking about. Kayano Shigeru is a figure that is important in modern age, but I'm going to talk about his grandfather first, because he cited this as an influence. His grandfather was a child who was taken when young to work in a herring camp as part of the assimilation program. And he was so upset and so, of course, why would you not be? You're taken away from your family and not allowed to speak your language. It's hugely traumatic. But he just wanted to go home. So he decided to injure himself so that he would not be as useful for working. So they would send him home. So he cut off his own finger. And then when he went to say, hey, I'm hurt, I need to go home, they were like, stop crying. So Kayano Shigeru remembered his grandfather telling him this story, and that kind of helped galvanize him. So in the 1980s, the government appropriated some land because they were going to build dams, and it was Ainu land. And so he sued them, which was the first time that had been successfully defended or successfully addressed in court. It was not defended. The dams were built, but he made progress in court that had never been made for the Ainu before. In 1994, he became the first Ainu member of parliament. And There are certainly still, of course, issues with the Ainu in Japan today, but they are starting to get recognition, and there is archaeological digs into traditional Ainu sites, and there's an Ainu museum being built, and they're just, things are starting to change. Certainly different than what it was, even a few decades ago. Today, about 90% of the Ainu have Japanese Wajin background, so there's been a lot of cultural blending, but they still are an indigenous people and recognized, now legally recognized as such. So, and that's as long as we're going to spend there, because we still have a lot to go, but I strongly encourage you to do some reading on that if that was intriguing. Okay. We are not doing the Ikadai today because we got a lot of other things to do, but we are going to talk about the Byakutai. Okay. Let's do, so the Byakutai, we are jumping ahead to that Meiji Restoration that I mentioned. And we are going to, this is a very, very popular period for anime and manga. So you're going to see a lot of things here. By the way, the Golden Kamui, that on the right has a Russo-Japanese war veteran and an Ainu huntress searching for treasure. So there's another Ainu reference for you. And I'm just going to give a heads up that, this is where we get into the heavy stuff. We've had death before, but this is maybe a little bit different because we're trying to talk about kids. So just so you know. The Byakutai, as evidenced by the fact that we're opening this story with pictures of gravestones, it's not an upper, but this is another story that has been retold so many times and is not always retold with historical accuracy. So I want you to know what you're actually seeing. So, Aizu Wakamatsu is a city belonging to the Aizu clan, and when the Boshin War happened, when this is the shogun and the emperor going to war, because the emperor, we're going to have the imperial restoration. Spoiler: emperor wins. You're going to have the imperial restoration, and the shogun, who has been ruling allegedly on the emperor's behalf, but turns out doesn't actually want to give that up. That's what's going on here. So, during this war, the Aizu throws in on the side of the shogun a lot. So the Shinsengumi, which if you have done almost nothing with Japanese history, you've probably still seen the Shinsengumi, because they are an incredibly popular motif for anime, film, manga, everything else. And they have those iconic blue and white mountain pattern which is great because that's not actually what they wore the most often, but it looks the best on film. So that's the way we think of them today. And so they're supporting traditional shogun rule. And at this point, the shogun actually surrenders, and Aizu's like, yeah, we do not recognize that decision. We are going to continue being who we are, and we do not recognize the emperor. So in October 1868, the emperor has finished his fighting with Tokugawa, and he's ready to go and take Aizu, who has refused to recognize the surrender. And this is the only photograph we have of Tsurugojo, which is the castle in Aizu. This is after a 1-month siege, so it's not looking its very best here, but it's the only photograph we have of it. And it is the photo that was used for the recreation, which we have today. It was rebuilt in 1965. It was torn down after the war because when you rebel against the emperor and refuse to recognize his rule, he doesn't let you keep a castle. So, but before that happened, we are in Aizu. We are in Aizu Wakamatsu, and we have 4 units in our military. These are named for the 4 guardians, the Shishin, the 4 cardinal directions that you will see. So Genmutai, Seiritai, Suzukutai, and the Byakutai, are the turtle, the dragon, the what's usually translated phoenix, and the white tiger. There's the Byakutai. The Byakutai is the youth unit. It's supposed to be a reserve unit. It's teenage boys. It's the sons of the other warriors, the sons of the other fighters. So it's about 300 teenage boys divided into several subunits. So this is all well and good. They're not actually supposed to be on the front lines. And in Aizu Wakamatsu, there's the Nishinkan, which is one of the I'm going to call it a samurai school. It's where you go to learn how to fight and how to write and how to have the proper etiquette and whatnot. And it is one of the best in the country, and you can still go see it today. And so anyway, the Battle of Tonoguchihara goes poorly, and the reserve units find themselves being frontline units. And about 20 of the boys are separated from the main forces, and stuff is going very, very badly. But because they are kids and they played in this area and they grew up here and were allowed to run all over in the land before helicopter parenting, they know that there's a water supply line cut through Imoriyama. And so they duck down and they go through the mountain rather than over it, in avoiding being seen by the enemy forces. Now, I took this photo. This is a small dark hole full of water, and there is no way I really want to go in here. But on the other hand, nobody's shooting at me, so that's probably helps with the motivation. But so they come through Imori Hill or Moriyama. It's a hill, it's a mountain, depends on it's small mountain, big hill, something. So they come through it and they come around to the side of the mountain and they look down on the town of Aizu Wakamatsu. And as they look down, this is a statue marking where they looked down. As they look down on the town, they see that it is on fire. And what they believe to be the castle on fire. Now, actually, it's the castle town. It's the area around the castle. It is not the castle itself, which is still holding at that point. But they think their castle has fallen. That is, all of their parents, all of their families, their lord, everything at that point is lost. And so they agree among themselves to commit seppuku, which is the most honorable thing that they can think to do when everything has already been lost. And so this 20 teenage boys, singly or in pairs, commit suicide on the side of the mountain as the town burns. And this is not the worst part of the story. All 19 of the boys die. Inuma Sadakichi had lied about his age. He was not even old enough to be in the Byakutai in the first place. And he failed to commit suicide. He tried, he failed. So he is lying there among the bodies of his friends when one of the villagers finds him, nurses him back to health. And ultimately, it's interesting because of the way that the Meiji troops were operating kind of a scorched earth policy, and it was illegal to bury the dead because we weren't honoring the rebel dead. And so the villager who helped him was actually arrested for that, which is very sad. But Sadakichi survived. He actually grew up to become an engineer. I believe he was a communications engineer, if I recall correctly. And it wasn't until he was an old man that he revealed the story of what had actually happened with the Byakutai, with his, the 20 group. And so that is where we get his things. And I have tried, because what he said has been reported in several different ways. I've actually put in a request to get his original report or his original account. And the pandemic kind of shut all that down when I started asking about it in March. So, I will see if I get that at some point, but that's why I have what I have is the best that I have at this point. So Aizu Wakamatsu, of course, honors these teenagers hugely because they are considered to have done their best effort and strongly adhered to the Bushido code. And it was, of course, a tragedy that they died, and that they died unnecessarily because the castle had not actually fallen. So they are now buried on Imoriyama. There's a cemetery there for them, and then for other Aizu Wakamatsu soldiers who have died in battle since then. And so there is a poem written by the Aizu lord No matter how many people wash these tones with their tears, these names will never vanish from the world. And so that is there are monuments there now that have been brought from all over the world and set up there as just kind of a recognition of the sacrifice that these boys unnecessarily made. But they weren't the only ones doing sacrificing during this particular time in Aizu. We're going to talk about Nakano Takeko, who was also active at the same time. So we're still here in the Meiji era, and we're still in Aizu Wakamatsu. Takeko was probably born in 1847, 1840 something, seven's a pretty good guess. She was adopted by, which was completely normal in culture at the time, and trained by Akaoka Daisuke, and she was trained in swordsmanship and with a naginata, which is a where's my naginata things? Oh, I've got naginata pictures coming up. But she served as a personal assistant and as a martial arts instructor. She stopped being a PA when they tried to arrange a marriage for her, and she's like, "Thanks, but no, I'm going to head back to Aizu Wakamatsu," which is about the time that things were starting to break down and go south, go bad in Aizu Wakamatsu. So naginata, if you're not terribly familiar with it, this is a photo from 1870. So pretty authentic to the time period. This is what it would have looked like. So these are the samurai holding their naginata. They are a staff with a long curved blade at the end. You will hear today that the spears are a women's weapon, and that's largely something that was introduced later. Women could use swords or naginata, and that the women only use naginata is actually more of an early 20th century thing. But anyway, there's so much interesting things and pictures of women with naginata, though, if you start really poking around. This is just Watanabe's wife with a child on her back and two severed heads at her feet. I don't know what, but I bet you when she tells her kids to be quiet, they do, right? Like she looks, that would be terrifying. And the thing you've seen in film and anime where you whip the sword around really fast and block all the arrows, that's not new. Here's a woodcut of a woman doing that with a naginata. And so this is from a illustrations for a novel. So we get to have a little fun with that too. But yeah, these things are kind of going on. So the Meiji troops, the imperial troops, come to Aizu Wakamatsu. They outnumber the defenders 5-1. Defenders are going to hole up in that castle, and there's going to be a siege. Nakano Takeko gathers other women. Again, she's been an instructor. She's trained herself, and she's been an instructor. And she gathers other women who are trained, and she's like, "We're going to go and take care of." Now, there's a couple of variations of this on how it got started. One version is that she was trying to go and protect a member of the household and got disoriented or got given bad directions on the battlefield. But regardless, she ends up approaching a group of Aizu Wakamatsu soldiers with big guns. It's the word I'm looking for. It's gone now. Anyway, a gun unit. And so they said, "Okay, well, we're not here. We didn't get what we came for, but we're going to fight with you guys. We're going to go ahead and fight the enemy." And the men are like, "We cannot fight with women. It's crazy. Like, what will the enemy think if they see us fighting with women?" And Takeko pulls her knife and puts it up to her throat and says, "You can let us fight with you, or you will watch all of us commit suicide right now in front of you." And the men were like, "Go. Sounds cool. Let's go." And so these women joined the men on the battlefield and were fighting. And yeah, no, rifles come in later. Sorry. I know they appreciate the assistance. I was looking for a particular type of gun, particular type of large drag it around the battlefield gun, and it is completely out of my head. But the point is they came across a unit with guns. Big guns, not like rifles. And so they fought with them, and so they did pretty well. And so they were part of the regular forces. But now it's time to take a bridge away from the imperial troops, and we know this bridge is a suicide mission. We know everybody's going to die who takes it. Who that first line is already goners. So let's send the people who are probably going to die anyway. And so they Nakano Takeko and her group, and her mom and her sister, her younger sister, are in this group with her. And the women make a pact. Women make a pact with each other the night before that they are not going to be captured. They are going to die fighting. Nobody's capturing them. Now, I just want to mention the Joshitai, which is literally like young women's army, girls' army. That is a retronym. That's not what they were called at the time. That is what we today call them looking back. So she would not have called her own group that. But she's approximately 22 years old, and she's now leading somewhere between 20 and 30 women to take this particular bridge. And they're going in because they know it's, they know this is a one-way trip. Well, the men, the Imperial troops see them coming, and they're kind of like, wait, those are women. Those are women coming at us. And so they're a little surprised by this, but they pass the word, don't kill them. Don't kill them. We're going to capture them alive. Now, this was probably not for altruistic reasons. This is not because the Imperial troops woke up and put respect women juice on their Wheaties that morning. They had reasons for wanting the women alive, and it's the reasons that the women did not want to be captured alive, right? This was a we're going down fighting agreement. But that was a pretty significant decision, by the attacking forces, because they all had rifles and the women had naginata, and there was a long distance to close. So by all the strategies and everything you would think is that the group that has to cover ground and the group that has the range weapons, like there's a distinct advantage here, right? These guys, no, they chose not to use their range weapons because they were going to catch the women as they approached and take them alive, and that turned out to be a poor decision. Because those women closed with the naginata. And it is reported that Takeko killed at least 5 or 6 people that people watched her do, and could firsthand report on. And obviously nobody was taking video of this, but the women hit that group of men and just started taking them apart. So bravo. However, Takeko did catch a bullet after chewing through the front line for a while. And she called her younger sister to her. She got back and she called her younger sister and she said, "Take my head." Now, at the time, I'm sorry, I just saw the chat about forgot to put respect women juice on their Wheaties. I just talk. Words just keep happening. I'm sorry. I'm glad you liked it though. Where was I going? Oh, yes. Taking the head. If the enemies took her head, it would be massively, dishonoring. If her sister takes her head, then the enemies don't have it. So this is a thing of honor, but her sister has a really hard time decapitating her elder sister, who's also kind of a hero. And, she may have needed help to get the head fully cut off. That is not quite clear in the record if she was able to do it herself or if she had assistance doing it. But she did take the head. She took it to a temple nearby. And so today in Aizu Wakamatsu, there's an annual parade in Nakano Takeko's honor because of what she did and her efforts there. So good news, we're leaving the heavy topics. Yay. Significantly less death and destruction in the next few minutes because we're going to talk about the akabeko of Aizu Wakamatsu. So, okay. So we're in the same town, but we're going to jump back in time. So the akabeko is a little red bobblehead, basically, and it's a little painted figurine of a cow, and it's got the little swaying head action. And the story is that when they were building Enzoji, so a temple back in the 9th century, and a cow wandered into the site and just refused to leave, just got in the way and stayed there. But it turned out to be really useful because cows are big animals and very useful for, hauling and lifting and, doing the heavy labor of building a building. So the story goes that in 2 ways. Either when the temple was completed, she immediately turned to stone and gave her soul to the Buddha. And like, that's okay, but I don't really like that story. I like the other one better, which is this: the temple was completed and she lived out the rest of her days at the temple as an honored resident and then gave her soul to the Buddha, which is, I like better. So we'll see. No, hard to say. But either way, so the red cow was kind of a local legend at that point. When Toyotomi Hideyoshi became the new lord of Aizu Wakamatsu, and he brought with him, his own people, and including artisans and craftsmen, to the area, and he heard the story of this, local legend, the cow at the temple, and he, said, "Oh, that's a pretty cool story. Why don't you make some cow toys? Just so we can, kind of keep that in mind." It was a fun little story. And so the cow toys actually caught on and became fairly popular, little bobblehead cow toys. And then there was a smallpox outbreak, and we've talked about smallpox and the association with the color red. The way I heard this story, just telling you as it was told to me, is that the kids who had the red toys, the red cow toys, tended to have better outcomes on average than the kids who didn't. Okay. Any number of reasons that might be the case or be perceived to be the case. But regardless, what we have is red cow toys are very cheap as far as insurance and treatment goes. And when you are that desperate, you're going to take anything that you get. So red cow toys it is. So red cow toys actually became associated as sort of a protective charm to give to children and then to adults, as like, here's a little reference of, this akabeko. And of course, it is now iconic to Aizu Wakamatsu, and to Fukushima, which is the area that Aizu Wakamatsu is in. And so I have a video for you, but I'm willing to bet that the sound did not magically fix since my last session. So I'm going to do I'll probably have to do my best rendition here of this akabeko at the train station. You push the button. Oh yeah, good. I forgot I had subtitles. So I'll just sing the little song for you. Doko doko aizu wa itoku da pe. Konnichiwa. So that's how the song goes. And see, there we go. Okay. So the question about proximity to cows and smallpox immunity was recognized long before the vaccine was developed. I think that's a really interesting observation, but in this case, it was connected to the color red rather than to the cow, because I don't actually know if cowpox was a thing in Japan. I really don't know, and that'd be an interesting thing to look at. So, are you going to sing again? I did sing again. I'm sorry, guys. There we go. Yeah. So let's talk about puns a little bit. So I mentioned in the folklore session that Japanese is a language built for punning, because so many of the kanji or the words will have similar sounds but completely different meanings. So here you have Sayuki, meaning journey to the west, and Sayuki, meaning journey to the extreme. So you're able to shift the meaning of the title a little bit but keep a recognizable title. So, hey, come here, come on, press play. There we go. So we're going to talk a little bit about number puns. So numbers, as you may know, most things, but in particular, numbers can have more than one pronunciation. So 4 can be pronounced shi or yon. And because shi is also a homonym for death, sometimes it's inappropriate to use that pronunciation. 7 could be nana or shichi, again, depending on your situation. So you can start building, I've been talking a long time. You start building puns by using your numbers. So the Tokyo Sky Tree is 634 meters tall, and that seemingly odd number was actually intentional, because 634 can be pronounced Musashi, which then references Musashi province. So there we go. Like, you can put puns in everywhere. Now, if you're familiar with Metante Conan, so Detective Conan, or bizarrely relabeled in English, Case Closed, starring Jimmy. So there we go. Conan is absolutely reeking with puns. Like, there are so many puns. So the entire, and if my sister were here, she's a Conan fan and she could walk you through all of them. But it's important to know that pretty much everything in Conan is a pun. So they live in Baker Prefecture. This is reference to Baker Street. Professor Agasa is Agatha Christie. Like everything's a reference and everything's a pun to do something with mysteries or detective shows. But the Conan himself is a teenager who is shrunken to the size of a 6-year-old boy due to a particular drug he was given. That drug is apatoxin 4869, and it's an apatoxin, so that's why it's named 4869. Can be pronounced Yon Hachi Doku Q, or you can pronounce it Shiyaroku. Shiyaroku sounds like Sharoku, which is how the Japanese would pronounce Sherlock. So the drug which shrank the detective is a Sherlock reference. That is all that's a Detective Conan. That's all of it. It's just layers and layers and layers of puns, and he's just smugly punning at you all the time. So, okay. Oh, Elena is here. Hi, Elena. You can jump in with any other Conan puns that will be going on. All right. In Beatmania, there's a song that's just titled .59, but 10 go ku is one way to read. 0.59, 10 is the decimal point. So that's heaven. 10 Goku is heaven. So there we go. What a great and terrible reach. Yeah, the puns here, like, I didn't say they were all great puns, but I have to tell you though, the next one that's coming up is my absolute favorite stupid number pun. So, and I love this because I've done several half marathons, and I'm supposed to, we'll see what with COVID-19 and things. I was supposed to do my first full marathon later this year. Don't know that that's going to happen now, but in kilometers, a marathon is 42.19 kilometers. Okay. That can be pronounced shi-ni-iku. Shi-ni-iku is I go to die, which is pretty much how I feel like marathons should be described. So, okay, that is where we are going to wrap this. I'm happy to answer questions for a few minutes, and then please, please, please don't go away. If you are on Twitch, stay right here. The stream will drop and then we'll come back for the Phantom Thief and Illustrated History, which is tons of fun. If you are on YouTube, you know what? I have no freaking clue what's going on with the YouTube links. I'm so sorry. But if you go to the main channel and then watch for the new stream to start, and as soon as that new stream starts, I will put a link up in the details, and then we'll try to get on top of that. I am so sorry. What's going on? All right. Next up is Phantom Thief and Illustrated History, which is it's not specifically about Japan, but it has a lot of Japanese literary history in it. It is about the literary archetype of the gentleman thief and how that developed both in America and in Europe, and then also was developed to a fine art in Japan. So Elena is going to be the primary speaker on that. I'll be running tech, which means perhaps we'll be able to get the tech worked out. I don't know. We'll find out. So okay. I invariably type couch to 5K as cough to 5K. That's completely, I'm with you. All right. So does anybody have any real questions? Oh, no, sorry. Fun fact. First marathon runner did not die. So sorry. Euripides, that was a retelling that was false. He actually ran before the Battle of Marathon, not after, and he was fine. But that makes much less exciting story. So that's why they tell the story of that he died after reporting the outcome of Marathon. I'm so sorry. By the way, yes, I am a nerd. I'm a really bad runner. I don't run at all, but I do nerd really well. Okay. Okay. Does anybody, oh, thank you guys. I'm so glad. Yes. Please turn in the Gen Con tickets. They mean nothing because they're free. So it's not like I get paid for them. But if Gen Con sees that people enjoy this material, then they give us space to do more material like that. So if you enjoyed it, please throw that this way. And I'm going to sign off now, take a bathroom break, which I have not been able to do for a number of hours at this point. And then we will be back with Phantom Thief. Again, Again, if you're on Twitch, stay right here. It will reappear magically in front of you. If you're on YouTube, I will get that up and find the new link and share that with you. So thank you guys very much. I totally, really appreciate it. And we'll see you shortly. Okay,